guys, today we're going to be talking about new mythical monsters that we can expect in-game very soon. This has been a bubble that has been blowing up for quite a while, but indeed it has just been popped with the recent reveal that 3 people are going to be having the chance to go to Big Blue Bubble and help them design 3 new mythical monsters. It has previously been revealed on Pandemonium that an upcoming Magical Sanctum monster would reveal more about the Mythicals. If we have a look here.
Future undiscovered monster on a certain recently discovered island might hold a clue.
So indeed, there's been lots of things going on in terms of new Mythicals and what we can expect from them, and indeed it has got to a point now where I just can't resist and we do have to talk about it, I do think. Whilst new decorations and costumes have also been announced on the Kickstarter that is going on right now that fans can get involved with and help the company develop, it has been mainly revealed that new Mythicals are on the horizon. And I just want to say that this is really exciting. We've not seen any Mythicals ever since Gajube and Yorstridge, which were all the way back in the early days of My Singing Monsters, back on the PlayStation Vita. It's still really weird to think that they were exclusive for so long until Psychic Island and so forth came along in 2019, which of course was an epic time for the game, but today that's besides the point, because we do need to talk about the Mythicals and what we can expect from them now we have this reveal. Obviously, seeing as though there's 3 new mythical monsters on the way, it makes the most sense that we could come to expect them across the natural islands, the other islands that Gajube and Yorstridge are on, with those being Cold, Water and Earth Island. I think this would make the most sense, as it would add more content to the natural islands, and obviously it would complete the mythical saga in a really nice way. We know that they're only discovered on the natural islands as of yet, and whilst it would be nice to add them to the Fire and Magical Islands, with the magic 3 number being introduced here, that 3 new mythicals are on the horizon, it looks like it is the most likeliest case that we could just come to see them on the natural islands. I don't want to outrule the other islands, and I do think we have to take it into the possibility scale whether we will see future mythicals on those islands, as we do know that that is entirely possible. However, I do think that it is the most likely situation that we will see them on the natural islands. Right now, there's nothing coming out to the natural islands, and we don't know much about how the songs are going to be expanded upon in the future. And we know with Big Blue Bubble that they love to expand on the islands later down the line, and I'm sure that they still want to advance upon the songs of the natural islands, which are the ones which players mainly encounter as well as they play in the game, as those are the base islands that people sprout from and encounter the magical and fire islands, so it would make the most sense for them to go down this route. And I think something to focus on with this new reveal that we've been introduced to with the Mythicals is the amount that has been suggested right here. It seems really weird that they may go ahead and fully go out there and say, we're going to allow the community to develop all 3 mythical monsters if that's all that's to come out of this, and they are being a little secretive behind where the Mythicals may be, as we can see on this comment that was made on the Kickstarter page. That might be just for hype purposes and not wanting to share the full details behind everything, but they aren't revealing where the Mythicals specifically come from, and that raises eyebrows certainly, so I do want to point that out, that they aren't commenting about that right now. And it will only be the people who do get the rewards that will know about this, and sure, they may have the chance to share it with us all, but I do think it's unlikely that they will have the capacity to, as I think they will want to keep it a secret Big Blue Bubble, and they will suggest to the people that they are communicating with to just keep it under wraps as of right now until they release, and I do think that's the most likely situation. I would certainly imagine for the process of getting the Mythicals out there that it would be the case that we will not hear anything about it from the people who are going there, and that it is going to be just under wraps which islands they go to until later down the line when we encounter them ourselves. A keynote that is brought up by the Pandemonium reveal that we talked about earlier is the fact that an upcoming Magical Sanctum monster is going to discuss this in some relevancy. Now, this doesn't explain whether it's going to explicitly go on about new Mythicals and when we could expect them and things like that. Maybe this could tie into that, and whether we can just expect them amongst the natural islands and that's all of the Mythicals that we can expect as of right now. Or maybe it's going to tie into other Mythicals that we could expect besides the 3 that we have as of right now that we know about. It seems really curious towards the alluding that they're doing right here, and the timing behind it is certainly questionable as well. It's questionable to me why they would choose to reveal the the new Mythicals beforehand and then tease them in game. If you're going to do that, it would make a lot of sense to maybe just put the teaser out there in a Magical that's already released before the Kickstarter and then announce the Kickstarter, because then that's a double whammy, and then you get the release teaser out there, don't you, beforehand? But it seems like they have a bit more to reveal here. Maybe it's going to tie into the Mythical lore, the upcoming bit. That certainly could be the case. However, I do think it's certainly questionable what is going on with that and why they are choosing to tease it after the Kickstarter rather than before. We know that the Magicals are releasing every single 2 weeks. They could have released it anytime, this other monster. Maybe it's the quad. That would certainly explain it, because they probably want to save that until last, but that's a very unlikely situation, because we know that the quad is going to go on about the Titan in some capacity in its lore. So therefore, that means that it's got to be a double or triple elemental. And I do assume that the magical monsters have been developed, and they do have the capacity to choose which monster that they would dedicate their time to first. So it is a little confusing why they wouldn't choose to develop that one first unless they had more news to share. And that is why I think it's very exciting, because that, in fairness, does mean that they likely do have something to share, whether it's to do with the lore, whether it's to do with the release, or the islands themselves. There is certainly some information that is being kept here away from us, I would imagine, because having a mythical teaser hidden in the bio that doesn't bring anything new to the table other than what we know about the Kickstarter would be very weird at this point, I would believe. So it certainly is questionable. Obviously, even if the teaser just alludes towards the islands, that is a huge deal, and I don't know how they would go about it either, because it's got to tie in such a way that even when the Mythicals have released, it still makes sense as well. So you've got to think about it from that perspective as well. And I do want to talk about the other possibilities that we do have on the table here. Now, with the Fire Islands and Magical Islands, we know that's with the Fire Islands. We've had the Dipsters, we've had Gobligod, but specifically for the Magical Islands, we know we've had no song expansion. So the Mythicals would be a really good tie into this, and I think that the Mythicals do suit as well the magical elements that we've seen thus far. So it could be the case that we could see the Mythicals amongst the Magical Islands, and I certainly think that those are more likely above the Fire Islands. I certainly think that the Natural Islands are the most likely conclusion to draw up, as those seem the most likely of all for these three Mythicals to inhabit. However, if we're going to expand further amongst the Natural Islands, I certainly think we are going to see the other three Natural Islands get them, but if we are to expand beyond that with the Mythicals, I think the Magical Islands are the next realm of possibility for these Mythicals to wander amongst, as the Magical Islands would just benefit immensely from getting that song expansion from the Mythicals. I don't feel like the Magical Islands need it in any way, to be honest, but it is just a case of bringing more exclusive kind of monsters that you can expect amongst those islands, as sure, we have our rares and epics and our natural monsters, but mainly, if we're just talking about the song, we only really have the natural monsters on those islands. Not to get confused with the natural monsters themselves, but rather just meaning the four elements and the element combinations that we have amongst the island itself. So introducing some more limited kind of monsters would make the islands more grandiose and special in their own way. So I would love to see it, even with the magical monsters that we have right now. Adding even more to those rosters on those islands will make me love the islands even more, and I'm sure it will for you guys too. And I'm really excited behind the possibilities for these Mythicals on magical islands potentially. Even with the Fire Islands, it would add a lot to those islands too. If you're talking just in terms of how this would fit in though, the Mythicals going there doesn't really sit well in the brain, does it, if you know what I mean, because the magical islands are indeed separative to the natural islands, as we all know, and having a monster class clash against those islands would make it a little confusing looking at it from that kind of perspective. So maybe from that perspective you could say indeed that the Fire Islands would make the most sense. I do want to look at all the opportunities here, but I do think it is the most likely that the magical islands would receive this kind of an upgrade with the Mythicals and so far. I do want to bring up though that with the Fire and Magical Islands, I would love, I think, even more for a new class to be introduced besides the Mythicals. I think that the Mythicals saga being completed with the Natural Islands is a much more fitting conclusion, and whilst I do really want new monsters to be released on the Fire and Magical Islands, maybe a new class would be even better. So I do want to consider that. It would indeed add more diversity, but there's other ways around it. It would make the islands similar in a way too, if you're thinking about it in the regard that each island would have a mythical. I mean, if you're finding them all on the natural islands, because I do assume that they're going to complete that mythical trend amongst those, and then they potentially add it to the fire or magical islands. That's a lot of islands with mythicals on, and I'm sure you can say the same for natural monsters, I guess, too. But it seems a lot for that kind of a rarity of a class to be on, so that does make me think otherwise towards what would happen with this. For the release of the Mythicals, I would like to draw to the Kickstarter project once more. As we know, 3 amazing fans behind the game will have a chance to make a mythical monster, and it says for this package that people can purchase via the Kickstarter that this will be distributed to them approximately by December of this year. So going from that, it makes a lot of sense that we would not see them this year, which is really weird to think about. I definitely think that these will be released separately and that we will see them in seasonal events, maybe, because I don't see what's going to happen after the Colosseum once we've seen all the seasonals come out on the Colosseum, as that's the new thing that's been added with each seasonal event. And to continue that trend, I think the Mythicals will be a really nice addition to add in future seasonal events. And going from the December time window, I would say that at least we will see them next year-ish. I would assume that if they are going to go with the seasonal trend, that we would see the first one on Cold Island by December at the earliest, but honestly, I wouldn't even go because it seems like they wouldn't have enough of time by that point to have developed upon it. It depends ultimately on their time frame in getting those people across for the visit to develop the monsters themselves. So ultimately, I would say that you could expect them next year at the earliest, but honestly, then again, we do have to wonder what may happen and when the lucky fans, of course, will get the opportunity to go across there, as we don't know when that will be. It could be earlier, and that could lead on to us seeing Mythicals by Christmas, maybe, or it could be later, and that could mean that we'll see them next year. It's hard to know, but I would agree that it's the highest possibility that we will see them next year exclusively. I'm excited to see what creations people come up with. I'm sure they're going to be wonderful, and I can't wait to see the community interaction as well, and to see what comes from it. I hope you enjoyed me talking about the Mythicals today. If you did, make sure to leave a like down below, and make sure to subscribe too. For now though, guys, bye!